It's Absolutely Auburn, a place where we'll talk about all things Auburn, Maine, because we're in the middle of it all. The City of Auburn's communications team is dedicated to helping you connect with city government and learn everything you need to know about Auburn, our city, our people, our events, and our community. Welcome to Absolutely Auburn.
On this episode of Absolutely Auburn, we have another guest co-host, Emma Burns from the Finance Department, joining us. We are also welcoming Karen Scammon and Joe St. Peter from Auburn's Assessing Department in, so that they can explain a little more about the revaluation process. Welcome back to Absolutely Auburn. I'm your host, Jenn Boenig, and today's guest co-host is Emma Burns. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you.
Emma is an accounting assistant in our finance department. That's still right?
That's correct.
Okay. I know we've had some changes, so I'm just making sure I'm still calling you the right thing. Okay. And Emma's also my go-to finance person, typically. Also joining us in the studio today are Karen Scammon, Auburn's Assessor, and Joe St. Peter, Auburn's Deputy Assessor. Welcome, Karen and Joe.
Thank you.
So, Karen, can you explain a little more about what an assessor is and share a little more about what your typical workday looks like?
Certainly. So a lot of people aren't aware that a tax assessor is an agent of the state, and we assess property and evaluate property for the purpose of taxation. We have to follow all of the main revenue rules and regulations for assessors and adhere to the Maine Constitution with everything we do. Our main purpose, again, is to assess for the purpose of taxation, but we also must make sure that we are treating all taxpayers fairly, and each taxpayer is paying their fair share of taxes. That, in a nutshell, is what all assessors adhere to. A typical workday. Typical and workday don't go well together in the assessing world. We have a schedule. Our assessing schedule starts the day after tax commitment, and we have a yearly schedule that we follow until the following tax commitment. And we have things that we must do and deadlines that we must meet according to those revenue standards and the Constitution. So it's more of a month-by-month calendar, and based on the time of year it is, those are the tasks that we have to do. And I think Joe's probably going to go more into the month-by-month and what we do. So why don't you explain that?
Like Karen said, our typical workday really depends on the priority of the moment. We have special projects that come up. Sometimes there are legislative issues that we have to respond to that we didn't expect. So a lot of it's dealing with the unexpected. Right now we're dealing with public outreach. We're talking to taxpayers about their taxes, their assessment, and we're doing property inspections in response. And that's really taking up a lot of our time and maybe doing things that we didn't plan on doing because we normally like to do this time of year what are called 1 and 4 inspections, where we go around and we assess properties in the city. But other things have kind of taken us from that. And that's really, we're playing catch up a lot, doing the things that we need to do. Fundamentally, though, in a broad sense, we assess all real estate in the city, and we assess business personal property in the city. All told, that's $2.6 billion in the valuation base, which should be changing, and I think we're going to talk about that coming forward. Another big thing that people may not realize that we do is that we manage exemptions, and exempt property is 20% of our total value. We have over 5,300 total exemptions that are on property that we have to manage and get correct. And we have to assess exemptions too. I think one misperception about exemptions are, well, if it's exempt, you don't have to assess it. We do, actually, because we have to account for it, and we have to tabulate it and report it to the state. So it's really important that we do that. And within those broad categories, we do a lot of other things. We have to update ownership. We have to maintain our tax maps and make edits to those. We grant abatement to, when we don't get it right, and sometimes we don't. We have to engage with taxpayers. We assist other departments because they often have a lot of questions about the property record that we have to keep straight. Like Karen said, we're accountable to the state. We have to deliver reports to them. We do something called sales ratio studies, one big one that we do for the state of Maine, but we also kind of determine if our assessment's correct and do all kinds of independent, smaller ratio studies throughout the year. We administer special programs for the state, like the tree growth program and the open space and similar programs. We have to be certified, so we have to go to training. We have to maintain our certifications and maintain affiliations with assessor groups. And we have to respond to shifting priorities, and really that's a lot.
Karen, property taxes can be a bit of a hot topic, which is super understandable. Can you explain how property values are determined?
Certainly. So the best way to determine the valuation of a property is to have the opportunity to do an interior and exterior full inspection. What we are looking for when we go into a property is what's the quality of construction? What's the quality and condition of the materials in the house? How old is the house? How large is the house? What's the living area versus maybe the basement area or the full exterior, the decks, the garages? All of that comes into play when we are valuing a property. An improved property, obviously. We also do land as well. But we'll talk improved property. We have a computer-assisted mass appraisal system, and that system is based on cost of materials, and also we put in quality and all of the things that we have determined of the improvements. And that computer-assisted mass appraisal we have set up with tables based on sales in the market. Land values are based on sales in the market, and if we put in the correct, accurate information, which again is best received through an inspection, it will tell us the value of the property, which we then test against the market and test against other properties to make sure, again, we go back to the equity. We need to make sure it's equitable with other properties that are similar. So that's the way we assess a property. It's all based on the market, based on sales, and based on the information that we've received through those inspections.
Now, we are about to undergo a revaluation. Can you explain in simple or as simple as terms? Because I know it's a complex topic, right? As I like to say, math. What is revaluation? Why do we need to do it? Why now? Is it something that should be done every so often? I guess. Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little more about that?
I'll start, and then I'll let Joe, because I know that he'll think of a lot of things that I have forgotten. We are mandated by the Constitution to assess at just value. Just value means market value. We have seen the market escalate extremely high sales in the past 3 or 4 years. We all know that our assessed values are not at market value. We also are realizing through the ratio studies that Joe has mentioned before and other studies that we have done that we are not meeting the standards set for assessors by the Constitution. When that happens, it's time to do a revaluation of all the properties in the city. And when I say all the properties, I mean residential, vacant land, industrial, commercial, everything in the city gets reassessed. Because although we have been making market adjustments based on the sales in the market, it gets to a point where the equity is not there anymore. And that's another indicator. It's time to do a complete revaluation. Want to expand on that?
Well, I think that actually covers it. I mean, on its face, a reval is actually quite simple. We are intending to assess all property according to its market value. When we do that right, we have a equal tax burden. People aren't paying more than their fair share, nor are they paying less. And when you do that, it moderates that tax base, it moderates the tax amounts that people are going to pay, and there are some potential benefits. And it's more fine-tuned than just making market adjustments like we have been doing, because that's kind of a gross across-the-board adjustment to certain classes of properties. When you do the revalue, you dig in a little bit deeper and you look at the particular neighborhoods, you look at whether or not the cost tables are correct for, the contributory value of a garage, for example, or the amount of paving in a commercial property. So all of those things are really looked at, and we're starting over kind of with a fresh slate based on current market conditions.
So because it's going to take several years to complete, is that why the city chose to work with a professional firm?
Yeah, that's one reason. One of the objectives in a full listed measure, which this is going to be, is to inspect every property, and that alone is very time consuming. And because we have a very diverse tax base mix, we have a lot of different types of properties in Auburn. We have residential, commercial, utility properties, agricultural. We have lakefront. I mean, Auburn has just about everything. But it's good to have an independent kind of analysis of that, and to have someone who may have some specialized experience in, say, a commercial property. Some properties are very difficult to value, like a dam, for instance, or a large industrial property. So having that, that added layer of knowledge and expertise is very helpful.
So when this process starts, people will be coming around. You're going to see them out and about throughout the city, visiting various properties, trying to determine, looking kind of at that checklist of things that they need to look at to help you guys plug in the information to then determine the value. So if someone knocks on my door, first of all, how do I know they're legit? How do I know that they're working for the city of Auburn? And then do I have to let them in my house? If I don't,
that's a good question.
If I don't let them in, what does that mean? I guess does it mean anything?
Certainly. First of all, the inspectors, the company that we ultimately will hire, which we have no contract signed right at the moment, but we are working on one. And in the contract, it does say that cars that they will be driving will be clearly identified. They will have on vests that will say Assessor. They will have badges, city badges, so their picture will be on it, their name will be on it. They will be registered with the police department, so that people could call the police department and say, hey, there's a car in my driveway and I'm just checking to make sure they're legit. We hope that we will have time to have either public meeting, or we will definitely have the website with pictures on it of all the listers that will be out in the field knocking on taxpayers' doors. Do they have to let them in? Absolutely not. They do not. They have the right to refuse to let them in. At the very least, what will happen is the inspector will stay outdoors, will note the property from the outdoors, make assumptions, obviously, based on what they're seeing on the exterior. We will determine value that way. If a taxpayer did not let them in and the letter goes out, because there will be letters sent to all the taxpayers with their new valuation. If they don't agree with that valuation at that time, they can schedule an appointment and have someone come in and inspect the property. If they still choose not to have someone inspect, then we are going to probably have them fill out a questionnaire about their property. And based on what they are telling us for information, again, how many rooms do you have in the house? How many bathrooms do you have in the house? Is your basement finished? Things like that will be on the questionnaire. Based on that and that exterior inspection and what we already have in the property record, that will all be taken into consideration, and a value will be set on the property. Even after that, when we go to tax commitment and we commit the taxes, if they are still not agreeing with what has been put on their property for evaluation, they always have the right to file for an abatement. And at that point, we would again ask them if we can go in their home. But there are several avenues for the taxpayer to have the chance to discuss their property valuation and to contest their property valuation.
And now I know you mentioned before quality. So I'm assuming if someone were to come in, if I let someone into my home, are they looking at the quality of the materials I have? For example, you know, I have stone countertops in my kitchen, or I don't know, I have wood floors on the floor. I guess what are those things that they're kind of looking at?
Yeah, exactly those sorts of things. A lot of times, though, when a house is constructed, that's when we establish the quality of it, the materials involved. And we don't look at, you know, if you added a stone countertop, that doesn't automatically change your condition or your quality.
Okay.
It doesn't, you know, we look at it in the aggregate. We look at the whole house. You know, you may have a house that has an absolutely beautiful exterior, but there's a lot of condition issues, a lot of problems on the inside. So that's one of the reasons why we like to inspect property, because the outside doesn't always give the true picture.
It can be deceiving.
Yes, absolutely. So, but you're right. It's what makes up the house that determines the quality, how well it's constructed, and it can be complex. You know, you can have someone who has an absolutely beautiful interior cabinets and countertops, but it wasn't it wasn't a high quality building when it was built.
Okay.
So, you know, all those things play into it. And again, that's why we like to inspect the properties during a reval.
All right, so that makes sense. So it sounds like, you know, don't panic if you've made some improvements. It's not necessarily going to...
And quality rarely changes. It's the condition that typically will change.
All right, that makes sense to me now.
Yeah. Now, Joe, how long will the revaluation take?
So our target is to complete it by 2027. Obviously, we need to get someone started in order to meet that objective, but certainly it won't be done before then.
Okay, now if it's not going to take until then, how long will it be until those new values reflect in our tax bills?
Yeah, so I would think as far as the reval goes, it might not be until August 2027.
Okay.
And depending on what the informal public process is, it could actually be later than that. So there are a lot of question marks before we actually cross that finish line. Our hope would be by August 2027, but we don't know. Our goal is to do it right, not do it fast.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that when we can cover our bases, that we can defend the assessments so that we know that it's being done. A lot of things can happen between now and 2027. The market may settle.
Yeah.
There may be other changes that we have to consider. So, we have a goal, but we also know that things change.
So say we were halfway through this process and the market then settles. Do you start from square one, or do you just kind of continue?
Great question.
Yes and no. I mean, obviously the buildings are what they are. You know, so when we're doing our inventory, that should be clear, hopefully, that we've done our inspections. And we'll be in a better position to say, okay, if the market does drop, we can apply those new values, you know, based on the inventory that we have. So no matter what, and sometimes you do revals because the value's low. It's not necessarily you do it because of an inflated market. You do a reval when things change, you know, neighborhoods change, buildings change, you know, so we're not just harvesting value, and I think maybe that's a misperception out there. We're trying to get it right.
Now, how often do revals happen?
Well, going back to standards and statutes, revals could happen every year. Okay. There are some municipalities in the state of Maine that revalue properties every single year.
Wow.
In Auburn, we have not, because we've met the standards coming up until this market escalated like it did. Mm-hmm. I know I have never seen a market happen and escalate sale prices the way they have ever.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, you do it when you're not meeting the standards anymore and the values need to be reestablished.
And to put things in perspective, we were declaring at 100% for, you know, well over a decade, almost 20 years, which means that the values themselves were reflective of the sale prices in the market.
Yep.
You know, in 2019, things started to change dramatically, and prices escalated year upon year upon year, and we still haven't really seen a plateau. You know, we're still seeing prices escalate, and no one would have expected that. And no one, I mean, it defies all logic. If you had told us before the pandemic that values would increase, I mean, we expected the opposite. We expected the
I think
bottom
most
to
people
drop.
did.
So we are in some unprecedented territory, and it's not just Auburn. Across the state, communities are grappling with how do you respond? Because if you don't respond, your ratios drop, and you're not in compliance, and that could forfeit some state reimbursement, and it creates some other issues, which are two conflicts to talk about.
Yes. Now, I think another probably misperception is a reval means my taxes are going to go up. That's just automatically what's going to happen. You just want to raise my taxes, and you're going to raise the value of my property.
Yep, thanks for asking.
So I'm just going to throw this in, and then I'm sure that we'll have more comment. You can only raise the amount of taxes to cover the budget. You can't raise taxes and have this huge surplus of taxes sitting around to spend on other things. So, yes, the values will increase substantially. And does that mean the taxes will go up? No. They could. For some people, they could go down for some people. It could depend on the class of property, commercial, residential. The mill rate historically drops significantly during a revaluation because it's a numbers game. If your values go up, your mill rate comes down because, again, you cannot raise more money than is going to cover that budget. So a lot of things are dependent on in the next 3 years. What's going to happen to this budget? We don't know where that's going to end up. We don't know where the values are going to end up right now, but I can 99.9% guarantee that we will see a substantial drop in that mill rate because historically going back, we have all of the mill rates and we have the years that the revaluations took place over the city of Auburn. And if you look at them, that's historically what will happen.
Yeah, and again, no, taxes don't always go up. And often, people like to quote statistics about, a third go up, a third go down, a third stay the same. I don't know that that's going to be the case here. It's hard to predict. We have been making these adjustments all along, so that should moderate some of these things. And assuming a reasonably flat budget, taxes should go down for some. And there's a variety of reasons for that. One, it may be that we determine the condition or the quality was lower than what we have in the record. But it's really about equalizing that tax burden amongst different property types. That's really where you're going to see the shift. Our focus has been on the single family, the multifamily, and land with our market adjustments. But this is more of a fine-tuned process where we're looking at everything. We're looking at the commercial, we're looking at the industrial, we're looking at the utilities. And those are the harder ones to determine because we don't have a lot of sales or market data for those. But there is data and there are ways to value those. So if we're undervaluing them, then it shifts that tax burden back to those commercial properties. Again, we don't know what the end result is going to be because a lot is going to happen between now and then. So it's about doing that analysis and doing it right, and hopefully there's benefits to everybody.
All right. So Karen, let's say that the team came in, I let them in my house, they looked all around, did the outside, the interior, everything, and I disagree with the assessment. Is there something that I can do about that, or is it just kind of set in stone?
Oh, no, it's definitely not set in stone. The taxpayer will have the opportunity, once those letters go out that we talked about, to give us a call and go over the valuation, let us know what you disagree with specifically, and then we will definitely take another look at it, make sure it's correct. At that point, it's reduced or we agree with what you have presented to us, then we will reduce the valuation. And if not, if we keep it the same, you always have that opportunity for an abatement.
Obviously, there are people who struggle to pay their property taxes for a variety of reasons. Are there any tax relief programs that are available to help folks, try to level that out?
Yeah, so most people are probably familiar with the homestead exemption. We have 4,300 plus people that are currently receiving that. I'm sometimes surprised that there are still people who don't get the homestead exemption, but there are. So that's one program that people can sign up for. They have to apply by April 1st of any given year and live in their home for a year in order to qualify. But that's one that's available.
And that's the only, you just have to,
No.
is that the only, like you just have to live there for the year?
You have to
As
own
of
it.
April 1st.
Yeah,
As of April
and you
1st,
have to
okay.
get the application in by April 1st.
Okay.
So there could be there are some scenarios where it may be a little bit longer than a year, depending
Sure.
on when you sign up and how that works. So
Okay.
and that's at full value. That's $25,000 off the assessed value. We would love to see that higher. So talk to your legislators, people. But we do need some reform, and we in this cycle we've been hearing from a lot of people that it's not enough, and I agree, it's not enough. But the homestead is one. If you're a veteran, you may be eligible for an exemption. We have about 500 veterans who are currently getting that exemption, and there may be more out there. So if you're listening and you're a veteran, you may qualify for the veterans exemption. That's also not a lot. It's $6,000 at full value off your assessment. Again, talk to your legislature because those are programs that should be available. There's no specific senior exemption for people. There was a stabilization program for a year ago, but the legislature, they had some problems they had to work out, so that was repealed. We hear that a lot. But for seniors, I really encourage them to look at the property tax deferral program. It's not for everybody, but I've definitely talked to some people in recent weeks who this would have been perfect for. It's basically a loan from the state of Maine. They'll pay your taxes as long as you live in the home and continue to be eligible. And you're no longer eligible if you die, obviously, or you sell the home. And in both of those cases, that loan has to be paid back either by the state or by you once you sell the property. And there's an interest involved. So for those who are at most risk of losing their home, this is a very good program. And I want to, people are afraid. They don't want to encumber their home. They don't want their heirs to have to take that burden on. But if it's between, being on the street or staying in your home, I think the deferral program is a good one for people to take access of.
And now people can contact you guys. Do they need to contact the state for these programs? If I hear something and I think I might qualify, who do I reach out to?
Come to the assessor's office. We have all the applications. We process at the local level the homestead exemption, the veterans exemption, the blind exemption. We take the application and all of the supporting docs for the tax deferral, and then we send it off to the state. The state ultimately approves or denies, and they will send a letter to the applicant and let them know, and then they manage that particular program. We also have a hardship or poverty abatement that is available. That's obviously based on your income and expenses. We have the application in the assessor's department. They also have applications over at the GA department. Thank you. Because GA ultimately will put the application together, and that has to be approved by the city council. So they handle that. But you could either come into the assessing department and we will hook you up with that, or you can go over to GA on Main Street and they can also assist you with that.
Right. And just for anyone who doesn't know, GA is General Assistance.
Right.
We all have the acronyms that we use all the time.
So now with the exemptions, you have your homestead, and then you gave another example of the veterans or blind. Now, what if I'm all three? What if I've lived in my home for a year? What if I am a veteran? And what if I am any of those? Can you do all?
You can, and if you are a couple and you're both veterans, you can actually get 2 veterans exemptions on the property.
Oh,
Good to know.
That's a great question.
Now that is, veterans is age related, 62 years or older, served in a federally recognized war period.
Okay.
Or 100% disabled and obviously has the supporting paperwork for that.
Yeah, I remember when I first move back here to Maine, and I live in Mechanic Falls. And I think one of the first things they told me when I went in to get the car registered and all the different things, she had me fill out the homestead exemption right away. We had moved in January, and she said, just fill it out now. We'll hold on to it. And she's like, and then we'll have to file it next year. But she's like, just do it, and then it's done. And I was like, okay. I didn't even know what she was talking about. I was just like, sure, I'll fill it out.
We encourage that as well. We hold applications until people are eligible.
Yep.
So.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Awesome. Now, what's the most interesting part of your job? And either one of you can go first. Doesn't matter.
Well, I'm weird. I enjoy processing sales and transfers. It's a labor-intensive project. But you're seeing property value, you're doing the deed research, and so that's really something I enjoy because there's an analysis that follows, about sales and as having a real estate appraiser background, sales data is exciting. So, but
okay, I'll take your word for it.
Mostly, I enjoy the inspections though. Yeah. Every home has a story, whether it's the architecture, whether it's the provenance or the people who live there. I love doing that part of it because discovering that story is, I think, what we do as assessors. We discover stories and we tell stories through the property record. So that's what I enjoy the most.
That's a great way to put that, Jen.
Yeah.
I love that.
I completely agree. Inspections are my favorite part of the job. Absolute favorite. For those reasons, but for reasons, you're always learning something. Construction is always changing. I've been into homes over the years where different types of materials are being used. I had no idea what they were. And I have to talk to the contractor and say, what is that? I've never seen that before. And it's fun to learn because contractors are great to work with. They'll explain everything to you, from heating systems to, construction of the house to new types of insulation. And so you're learning constantly. So every time you walk into, especially a new construction, what am I going to learn today? It's great.
Sounds interesting and dangerous. I just want to remodel my house every other day.
I know. I just saw this really cool product.
Yeah.
For now, a question we ask all of our guests. What is your favorite thing about Auburn? And it does not have to be work related.
Oh, that's tough. That's a tough one. I think my favorite thing is the different areas of Auburn. I can be in the middle of the city, and it's very dense, and there's a lot going on in the commercial areas. And 5 minutes later, I can be out in the country. And every time I drive, and it takes forever. I mean, if you start up on Maple Hill and you drive all the way to the Pownell line, you're a solid half hour. The area alone, and it's so diverse, and the neighborhoods are so different, and there's tons of things to do. And what you can't find to do here, you're only less than an hour from the coast, you're less than an hour from other cities, it's a great central place to be with, again, a lot of diverse neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think Karen just took my answer.
Oh.
But I agree. I mean, I think Auburn has a bit of everything. We're part urban, we're part rural. The best things about Maine, I think, are here in Auburn. And if not, we're close to everything. So, we're not far from the coast. We're not far from woods, the mountains. I can do the things I enjoy, skiing, hiking, biking. If I want to go to a Red Sox or a Patriots game, it's a short drive away. Auburn is my home. It's really the place I want to be.
Nice. Well, Emma, thanks for joining me today.
Yes, thanks for
Appreciated having you here. And Karen and Joe, thanks so much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, I know this is just the beginning of kind of information and communication that's going to go out to folks regarding the revaluation process. I know you had mentioned there would be, there's probably going to be a public meeting of some sort. I know that there are plans to do some sort of a webinar or a Zoom meeting. So there'll be some different things that are going to be coming out. And people should also monitor and look for official correspondence that comes out from your department through the mail as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And I know we'll have stuff on the website too. So just a reminder, you can find information about the assessing department by visiting auburnmaine.gov. Under the government tab, bear with me, people, I'm going to kind of walk you through this a little bit. Under the government tab, you'll see departments of the city. You'll go to that. Once you're on that page, you're going to look for finance, and under finance is the assessor's department. So you'll find information there. And like I said, we're going to have a ton of different information that's going to be going out. So make sure you monitor social, monitor the website, monitor your mail. We'll be getting information out there all sorts of ways. So
one last comment. We also are happy to have taxpayers come in. We'll talk to them one-on-one if they have questions about the reval or if they have questions about their property. Or so anytime at all, it's an open door. Give us a call. We'll set something up and come on in and we will answer all of your questions.
And normally, City Hall, we are open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4. Mm-hmm. So come on by. We're at 60 Court Street if you don't know where we are. So thanks again, everyone, for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Absolutely Auburn. You can find all things Auburn, Maine at auburnmaine.gov and goauburn.me. You can also listen to us anytime, anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio, just to name a few. The City of Auburn's communications team wants to remind you that Absolutely Auburn is the only official podcast for the City of Auburn, Maine.